From rainy California, Los Angeles, folks, we're live and alive, and I hope all the boys, girls, and MBs are having a fantastic one because today's a beautiful day. Today's a wonderful day. In spite of the rain, it's a big day today, and there's a lot to talk about, folks. Oh, my God. Holy Toledo, ladies and gentlemen.
Holy Toledo.
We have so much to talk about, so much to discuss. It's Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. Sunday fun day for Hungary. Majaristan has a very interesting day ahead of itself. We got elections happening there. Will a guy whose last name quite literally is the name of the country be able to defeat Viktor Orban? That's what I'm very excited to find out about. Fascinating day ahead of ourselves. Remember in January we said you'd take Sundays off? All right, shut up.
Bruh.
Shut up. Yeah, we got too much going on, obviously, so I can't just freaking do that. I saw Pot Save America. You did great. So many moments I was like, I hope he talks about the greatest in Israel who made them famous, and you did. And you quoted Albert Einstein. You did so great. Thank you. Yeah, I went to the lion's den of liberalism, and I spoke convincingly about why I say the things I say about Hamas and how I compare Hamas to Israel and say Hamas is 1,000 times better than Israel. So, like, that was, I think, fairly instructive for a lot of liberals. I think it'll be a good opportunity for a lot of liberals and normies to just, like, see what my perspective is, what our perspective is, really. But in any case, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, and MBs, we got a lot going on. Ezra Klein's article came out as well. This is me being a chud-ass loser. Doesn't change the reality that, you know, I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning, and I felt like a disturbance in the force. I woke up at 5 a.m. this morning, felt a disturbance of the force, looked at my phone, boom, right there. The king of liberals, Ezra motherfucking Klein, the king of liberals, wrote an article defending me, saying I'm not an anti-Semite and that people are fucking insane, which is awesome. This is going to be a very bad day for a lot of centrist liberals who have desperately tried to maintain their grip of control, their grip of influence, their grip of power over the Democratic Party in an environment where there are a lot of people who are who demand more from the Democrats. So that was the conversation for the last 3 weeks, and it's obviously coming to a close. And there are concessions being given right now. It's fantastic. It's phenomenal. I never thought we would get there. Anyway, are you going on Ezra's show now? I mean, I'm talking to him, so we'll figure it out. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, and MBs, you didn't tweet all night. Proud of you, Chud. Yeah, it's because what did I do last night? I didn't do shit. I did an interview with Prem. That's why. I did an interview with Prem Talker for Zateo, Day in the Life, and it was actually very interesting. The New York Times changed the title from Hasan is not the enemy back on the list, big dog. Wait, what did they change the title to? Because that was a good title. Hasan Piker's not the enemy. President level motion for this base king currently streaming. It's a concession by Klein. Beware of libs in sheep's clothing. I don't care. That's a good thing. You have to. This is why there's no liberal Joe Rogan. Okay, that's a fine title as well. But that's good. You guys don't understand how politics works, I don't think. You should understand how politics works. This is how politics works. This is a good thing. Okay, this is absolutely a good thing. This is a healthy thing. There's healthy friction existing in the Democratic Party. They probably would have done a better job if they just like never addressed this issue and just like kept people like ourselves on the sidelines. But they chose to fight this battle over a pivotal race, Abdul El-Sayed's race, and won. I think that's fantastic because it's fantastic for two reasons. Okay, number one, it gave much needed media attention to this Michigan Senate race that Abdul wasn't getting because he's a phenomenal candidate. Okay, that's number one. Number two, this is a healthy conversation to have. It's healthy friction that is taking place in the Democratic Party. I'm going to be talking about all of this and more. But first, personal news-wise, I'm in a pretty goddamn good mood. It's raining, but I'm in a good mood regardless because I worked out. I worked out today, this morning, and in my workout, I've been experiencing like really bad gains, like just a loss of strength for like the past couple of months or so. Finally, it's picking back up. I'm finally back up to 300, 295 technically on the squats as my top set. So that's good because I'm 34. I'm about to be 35 in July, right? So for me, it's been really tough trying to both lose weight, keep the weight off, and sit at a fairly significant deficit while also making sure that I don't lose my gains. Now, the reason why I kept losing them is because I got the coveted folks tweet from Dave Weigel. Okay, he's joking, obviously. But like
I hate
but this will do numbers with lib moms, by the way. I know there are white wine moms in the countryside that are going to see this and lose their minds. Be like, why can't every Democrat talk like this? This is exactly what we need right now. Because this is how I feel. And this is the real me. When I'm fucked up, that's the real me. You know what I mean? This is the pivotal message for a lot of Democratic Party voters who face themselves to be centrists, right? Like, but aren't actually centrists at all. So we'll obviously go through the Pod John's interview. 80,000 views in 5 hours, not bad. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. But every time I do Pod Save America, especially with John, every time I do that, usually a lot of new liberals who are fans of the Pod Johns will hear my perspective and go, oh my God, this is what the fuck? Like, why can't we have more people that talk like this? Right. And there's a good reason for it. It's because most of the mainstream media want those people to encounter me for the first time ever in short bursts, right? 10-second increments. I don't stream for 10 seconds. I stream for 10 hours, right? And this would have been very successful. This would have been very successful 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It certainly was successful against Bernard Sanders, right? It's no longer successful because independent media is uncontrollable and is not interested in abiding by whatever standards that mainstream institutions want to apply. So, yeah. In any case, ceasefire fails. JD comes home. U.S. wants to blockade the Hormuz, Lamau. Ezra Klein defends me. As centrist Dems concede on tent expansion to the left. Situation monitored. Epstein's Fury Day 43. New York City tomorrow. Yale Tuesday. Get in now. Bowden socialists have Mahmoud Mamdani coming to school. Also, Aphex Twizzy, I know your ass invited me to, or someone in your, I think someone invited me as well. What are you guys trying to like get all the people in like the Zohran Mamdani orbit? Because you know your ass can't get Zohran, so you're trying to get his dad. You're trying to get me. Your manager replied, "Yeah, I said I'd be down to do it." You ain't slick, bro. You are not slick. Also, are you trying to get the fucking chapter shut down? This is what I don't understand. Are you trying to get the chapter shut down? Because this is what's going to happen. Okay? This is what's going to happen. You want me to come on that campus? Is Zoran's dad mogging you? Yale, a demonic place. Please destroy the skull and bones. Geronimo's skull. Yeah, okay. Will do. But anyway, Orban L, ceasefire fails, JD comes home, all this stuff. We got so much to talk about today. It's a jam-packed Sunday. Normally, I don't even stream on Sundays. Normally, Sundays are fun days, but obviously today is going to be a heavy news day. Apologies for all of the fun day enjoyers, because obviously we have to cover the situation. We have to monitor the situation. A lot going on with said situation, right? Hawkeye with the butt. Bro, you're always streaming. True. Stop saying you have fun, man. I mean, this is fun for me. Bro, it's EF day 44, not 43. Started on February 28th, day 1. Added 31 days from March, goes 32. Don't stress, big dog. Maybe we just have a different way of doing the calculation. You know what I mean? I don't really care who's stressing the numbers at this point. You know what I mean? What's the difference between 44 and 43? You know, it's all shit anyway, right? Glad you're in a good mood, Chipper. Yeah, you want to know why I'm in a good mood and I'm chipper? Because for the last 3 years, I've been called a fucking terrorist nonstop by dumb shitters on the internet who desperately want to be recognized by the centrist flank of the Democratic Party, who have actively made it their lives' mission to present me as this spoiler, as this bad guy. And now you have one of the top dogs on the liberal side that every centrist leans into, that every Democratic voter listens to, that treats his word like the gospel, turning around and out of nowhere, by the way, literally out of nowhere. I had no idea that this was coming. Ironically enough, I had talked to Noah Colwin about potentially, doing some possible media hits in like on Jewish papers, right? He was like, "Oh, you should do Jewish Currents." I'd be talking to Peter Beinart. Anyway, Peter Beinart reached out to me a while back. I said, "Yeah, let's do it." But I always told Noah, I was like, what would be the best possible way to have this conversation is with Ezra Klein, who is the king of liberals and also the king of like liberal Zionism as well, right? Because that would be a very productive conversation. I know that he would most likely have a very open-minded conversation with someone like me, just like he did with Ta-Nehisi Coates, right? So from that perspective, this is like, this is the greatest. He just did it on his own. I thought I would be able to like reach out to him and do a podcast with him, but turns out wasn't even necessary. He just wrote it himself. How is it that the comment section from the Ross Douthy segment was a million times more charitable than the Ezra piece? I don't know what the comment section looks like, but they probably flooded it. But yeah, I don't even need to worry about the ADL because the person who's going to be cooking my ass is going to be Z-Way today, or well, tomorrow. So, that's where we're at. Your perseverance through every bit of bullshit these past 3 years is truly incredible. Beyond good seeing your tide rising, Papa. Yeah, I mean, it's it is. This is not just about me and my reputation and the reputational damage I incurred. That's irrelevant. That's secondary, right? As long as I have you, none of that shit matters. As long as I can still have a platform that I can say the truth on, and I'll keep pushing, right? But this is a very consequential change. The reason why it's a very consequential change is because this is a concession, an open concession from a liberal who is, very important in the liberal intelligentsia, who approached the issue with charitability and said, It's fucking ridiculous. Like, this is ridiculous. And it's not just about me. It's about this movement. So we have to align with these guys. That's huge. Because remember, initially, the conversation was like, Hasan is bad. Democrats need to stay away from him, you know? And what did I tell you? What did I tell you at the time? I was like, this ain't about me. This is about you. This is about all of us. This is about a change that is happening in the Democratic Party, who the Democrats should be more responsive to, right? What issues the Democrats need to highlight and need to lead on. Not just Israel, but Medicare for all as well, right? Economic left populism. These are things that I advocate for, and the collection of all of those resentments is precisely what the establishment feared. The establishment wanted to push aside, right? They wanted to make sure that they never had to have that conversation. They didn't want to talk about the message, so they wanted to shoot the messenger and disparage the messenger. Because the moment that you talk about that message, all of a sudden people are going to be like, wait a minute, I do agree with that. Now I feel like you're yelling at me, right? So this is a huge step in that direction. I think this is a first of many significant concessions to the left flank, okay? Very consequential. And we only got here because all of you stood strong and you were steadfast in your approach, in your advocacy, said, nah, we're not doing that. We're not playing that fucking game, right? And here we are. Here we are. In any case, I suspect that some liberals will take this lightly and will wave the white flag quietly. I saw Trey Easton of Searchlight Institute straight up saying, you know what, that's right, we're good, right? We're good. We should be done with it, right? We should be done with this shit. We shouldn't be fighting with Hasan. Why are we doing it anyway? Like, he says something along those lines, right? Which was really funny to hear, because he's been, one of the diehard. He's been one of the diehard, most frustrated individuals on this issue, right? He said, I don't think Hasan Piker is the enemy. I just wish that he and his followers didn't treat the Democratic Party like it's their enemy. Never Trumpers exist in the Democratic coalition without repeatedly bashing the party and demanding it take specific stances in exchange for their votes. If this is how he'd like to be treated, he should consider adjusting his own posture. See, this is the problem. Never Trumpers don't even need to make those concessions. They don't need to make those demands because the Democrats already leaned into that. That's the problem. That's the reason why we're having this conversation. If the Democrats were more responsive, to our demands, and our demands are the popular demands, our demands expand far beyond the people that tune in and watch me here every day, far beyond people who watch the TikTok clips and agree, far beyond the people who go on YouTube and only watch the clips. Our demands are popular demands that many Americans across the board, people who've never fucking voted for the Democrats, people who self-identify as independents, and even Republicans living in the countryside, these are their demands as well. So not only is this good politics, it's good policy, but it's also good politics, sorry. Not only is this good policy, it's helpful in advancing people's material conditions. If you were standing proudly and saying, we are the Medicare for all party, we're gonna fix healthcare in this country, we're gonna fix housing in this country, right? We are the party that says fuck Israel, right? Like, that is a broadly populist message, right? So it's not even the Democrats being responsive to us and our needs. We're not like petulant children on the side, demanding this shit for no reason. We want the Democrats to push for these policies because it'll also win elections, ensure that Republicans never win again, and last but not least, it will improve people's material conditions. That's what is the most important, most consequential aspect of this at the end of the day. The Never Trumpers don't need to make demands in daylight. They do behind closed doors as donors. Yup. listen to her. I am always vindicated. Z-Way posted on our IG channel broadcast and asked people to drop questions for your appearance. And of course, Ethan Klein Cultist shared it on their sub. And they completely brigaded it with a bunch of questions about Kaya, about being pro-rape, helping Trump win, etc. There's barely any normal questions. It's the only question thread with hundreds of comments. I hope you reach out to Z-Way and let her know what's going on. Thank you for informing me. I'll do that. I'm sure she's aware. Yeah. Genuine question. Shouldn't leftists or progressive Democrats then run on a just 2% platform in regards to how much we want to tax the billionaires and deal with some of these issues? I mean, whichever way it works. Just another psychosexual stalker. How do you keep catching these dudes like Pokeballs? Kamala said, be transactional. My queen.
Earlier about how people are so transactional. I think we need to be transactional voters.
I mean, not only did you make zero concessions knowing that people had your back, you deserve this victory lap. Your convictions and strong moral standings keep getting vindicated. This whole past month was one big Streisand moment for the race in your profile. Yup.
I think, yes, it is right when we are trying to get folks to register to vote and to go vote. And it is absolutely right that we remind everyone of our history, especially when they're trying to erase it. We remind people of the lives, the bloodshed on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the sacrifice of those young people at the lunch counter, the assassination of Dr. King. There are so many things that we must remember about history so that what compels us to vote includes not only our civic duty, but honoring the ancestors. Yes, and here's what I'm suggesting in addition. Get yours. Vote and say, I'm voting because I expect something out of this. You're not going to take for granted that I'm going to vote because I'm a good citizen and it's my civic duty to vote, so that you don't even worry about whether you're producing what I need because, oh, we can count on them to vote because they remember the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I'm saying it's okay to also give people permission to be transactional and to say, if you're going to get my vote, this is what I expect.
Yeah. $50,000 in tax credits for small businesses. No Medicare for all. No end to the genocide. This is what we want. This is what we want. This is how we must be transactional, okay?
I'm going to vote because I expect to get something out of this. I'm going to get mine by voting. That's what I would offer. I think it's okay to give people permission to be transactional voters.
Yeah, when I said this about Kamala Harris's election, everybody yelled at me, by the way. So what's up? She literally thought get yours was going to be a huge applause line. I just don't understand, because like this is literally what I was saying. This is at the heart of theoretical democracy. This is the principle. This is the fundamental aspect of the democratic process. Voting is a transactional experience. Voting is not given, is earned. Votes are earned by Democrats, okay? And that is at the heart of my frustration, okay? That's at the heart of my frustration with the Democratic Party, which I addressed, I brought up in my Pod Johns episode. Very excited to watch that with you guys soon as well. But yeah. Why do you always do the illegal thing of being right too early? What the hell is wrong with you? Are you evil or something? Yes, I am evil. I am evil. Okay? That's what it is. That's what it motherfucking is. Okay. Anyway, let's get started on this. This is why there's no liberal Joe Rogan. Now, originally, the title was "This is why there's a Dr. Jihad." Just kidding. The original title was "Hasan Piker is not your enemy," right? Hasan Piker is not your enemy was the original title here. And a lot of people are picking some choice quotes out of this, okay? Great piece overall. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to read it with you guys, and a necessary one, and one that is ultimately very consequential, and one that also vindicates me even in this community, because for years, a lot of you have been very angry at Ezra Klein for good reason. I have my disagreements with Ezra Klein. I've let him know. I've let him be known time and time again, but I always maintain the position that he is far more responsive and far more open-minded than the average liberal is, right? Like, I've always said, I don't know what it is about Ezra Klein, but I think there's something about Ezra Klein that you know, regardless of his liberalism, he's not as firmly planted his heels on the gospel of neoliberalism, or at least like he's more open-minded to and more responsive to, you know, what the fuck is actually going on, right? I said, I have my differences in opinion with Ezra Klein, but I appreciate this thoughtfulness on the discussion around reducing ideological opponents to 10-second quotes, platforming, and of course, the reality that the Israel discourse has shifted out of the old constructs mainstream media clings onto. Right? This was the most hypocritical post. You live in tropes, sound bites, and racism is an anti-American neo-baby. Neo-baby? What is a neo-baby? I'm a neo-baby? Like a baby that just is a new kind of baby? The fuck's this guy saying? Jim Walden got so mad. He didn't write Nepo baby. He wrote Neo baby, who wants Marxism but chose to come back to America rather than going to Lebanon, Gaza, or remaining in Turkey. I say this plainly. America doesn't deserve ... you. Yeah, I mean, I don't think America deserves me, but America got me, baby. You know what I mean? That's Vicky Palladino's lawyer. Yeah. It is pretty funny. Opposite of a paleo baby. Yeah, true. Stop coping. He got you good, Ugh. Yeah, he destroyed me. He called me a neo baby. I've never heard that before. I do not like that Ezra basically says in the article that ethnostates are a normal thing. Yeah. We have our disagreements, okay? You pick and choose. All right? It's fine. You have to understand. He's not going to come out and write an article and be like, Yahya Sinwar is like vindicated or something. He's not going to do that. Like, what are you, fucking nuts? This is a important moment because he is, in many respects, saying the truth. Okay? And unfortunately, in this day and age, saying the truth requires courage. It's important. It's an important step in the right direction. I'm not going to fucking cast aside. I'm not going to just like shit on him for doing that. Okay? I'm not going to shit on him for doing that, especially when he could have just as easily leaned in or never said anything about this, or just as easily leaned into the same exact narratives over and over again. This is an important step in the right direction. Okay? This is an important step in the right direction. You have to be more graceful and more gracious when you receive these kinds of gifts, okay? Because sometimes, if everyone is lying, saying the truth is a gift. Okay? I mean, ethnostates are a fairly normal thing. Unfortunately, a lot of states are ethnostates, but Israel's unique part is being an ethnostate while occupying an equal number of people who are not of that ethnicity. Yes. Also, ethnostates are not good regardless and are inherently self-defeating. One of the best examples of this is obviously Japan, right? That's Japan is destroying itself in order to maintain its ethnostate status. So what the fuck what more do you want to see? I mean, there are living, breathing examples. living, breathing examples of how, the maintenance of an ethno-state ends up being totally untenable. Right? All right, this is why there's no liberal Joe Rogan. Let's get started. It's a 12-minute, 55-second article. After the 2024 elections, there was panic among Democrats about the absence of a liberal Joe Rogan. Could one be found? Could one be created? It was an epic exercise in missing the point. You cannot have a liberal Joe Rogan because Rogan is not particularly political. His audience cohered around conversations with comedians, MMA fighters, bodybuilders, and psychonauts. That's what made him politically influential. He could reach millions of people who were not otherwise interested in politics. The problem Democrats actually had, one of them anyway, was that they didn't like Rogan and criticize others for going on his show. They tried repeatedly to cancel him for his comments about trans people, his skepticism about COVID vaccines. To the extent that he is now a right-coded figure, it's not because he started that way. Rogan's political views are mixed. He backed Bernie Sanders in 2020. He supports universal health care and abortion rights. He dislikes vaccine mandates and lacks border control. But it shouldn't have been a surprise when, after years being attacked by the left, he endorsed Donald Trump in 2024. The simplest way to tell people which side they're on is to tell them how much your side hates them. Now, I don't even fully agree with this assessment, right? Although I agree with the spirit of being a little bit more tactful in the way that we communicate. And this is something that the left also absolutely needs to understand, internalize when you're trying to build a fucking coalition. Because think about it this way. If I was, constantly bouldering Ezra Klein, I probably would have had less interest in taking a sincere look at, what I put out there, right? It's just, we do honestly have a problem sometimes where we behave very antisocially. You don't have to make concessions. You don't have to concede on these people's worldview at all, right? Not the same as Rogan. No, I mean, I have been unbelievably critical of Joe Rogan, but there was never a moment where I was like, I can't believe Bernie Sanders would go on Joe Rogan. Whenever people brought that up, I was like, shut the fuck up. Of course he's going to go on Joe Rogan. He's trying to win, He's trying to win the election. Right? Like, I obviously am unbelievably critical of Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan will never have me on his show for that reason. Right? But the reality of the matter is, it's important for people to go on Joe Rogan. I would go on Joe Rogan if asked. I would go on Tucker Carlson if asked, right? Like, I don't have any issues with that at all. Many in this community would have an issue with that. They say, you're platforming, you're normalizing him. Because, we have our moral posture, we have our convictions, and sometimes we forget that, person to person, peer to peer communication requires you to be a little bit normal and to dance around, to take the victories that you get. Okay. Joe Rogan doesn't ask people on. They ask to be on. Yeah, no, I know. All right. That brings me to a more important than it might look controversy that has burst out over the leftist streamer Hasan Piker. He had a breakout moment over the past year as Democrats began obsessing over the absence of a liberal Joe Rogan, and Piker, who mixes leftist politics with a bro-ish aesthetic, was proffered as a possible answer, a category error, because, again, the whole point of Rogan's political power is that his show mostly avoids politics. But pick over Piker's years of streaming, and you can find offensive things he said, among them that America deserved 9/11, that his favorite flag is Hezbollah's, that a liberal Zionist is akin to a liberal Nazi. Now, that last two even, is not, offensive to me or to many others as well. But, I guess it's offensive to the perspective of the kind-hearted liberals reading the New York Times opinion editorial section on a Sunday morning. Streamer has said offensive things isn't really a news story. But then Abdul El-Sayed, the more DSA-ish candidate in the Democratic Senate primary in Michigan, began rallying with Piker. That led Third Way, a centrist group that previously demanded that Democrats draw a line in the sand and shun Hasan Piker, and his fellow Jew haters to send a letter to al-Sayed demanding details about how closely you align with his most abhorrent views. Jonathan Greenblatt, the head of the Anti-Defamation League, also known as the Apartheid Defense League, said Piker reflected the dangerous normalization of anti-Semitism in our politics. Politico then asked a number of possible 2028 Democratic hopefuls whether they would appear on Piker's show. Governor Gavin Newsom and Rahm Emanuel said they would. Representatives Ro Khanna and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez already had. Senators Cory Booker, Ruben Gallego, and Elisa Slotkin said they wouldn't. I think there's rather a lot wrapped up in this controversy, so let's take it piece by piece. Immediately goes into it and cuts away at the whole thing. He says, is Piker a Jew hater, as Third Way alleges? In an interview with the writer Aaron Regenberg, Piker addressed some of his worst comments. I find some of his answers compelling and others less so. The comparison of liberal Zionists to Nazis, for instance, is repugnant and not much improved by Piker clarifying that he opposes ethno-states. What made the Nazis notable wasn't their support for an ethno-state. Ethno-states are common. What made the Nazis notable was their effort to exterminate the Jewish people. And Piker's assertion that his opposition is to all reactionary ideology is hard to square with his admiration for Hezbollah. Okay, two things. So this is his disagreements with the way I've presented myself. Here's the issue. The reason why I say Israel is a Nazi country or Zionism is a Nazi ideology is because that is the truth. It's a reactionary, nationalistic, fascist ideology akin to Christian nationalism that we experience here in the United States of America. It's base boosted because Israel has been carrying out that violence that is the undergirding ideology of the state in order for Israel to exist as a Jewish state that is built on top of millions of Palestinians, many of which are not Jewish. You have to ethnically cleanse those Palestinians, and that's precisely how it works, right? There are plenty of states that have been designed as ethno-states or turned into ethno-states, like Japan is one of the greatest modern examples of this, right? Japan also did its own indigenous genocide in an effort to create an ethno-state, right? It's true, except modern day liberals and modern day socialists and leftists and progressives alike do not agree with those actions. Those actions of the past, just like we don't agree with the actions of the Nazis, and therefore we must not agree with the actions of Israel when it's happening in front of us, right? The whole point of learning about history, the whole point of learning about the Holocaust, the whole point of learning about, the dangers of fascism is so that we don't fucking repeat it. It's at the core of this principle. Never again means never again for all, not just never again for Jewish people, right? So that's the point. That is why I oppose it. Now, I would love to have a conversation with Ezra Klein about this particular issue because I find it very interesting that he's very thoughtful, but this is a glaringly obvious blindside that he demonstrates, and he demonstrated that with his Ta-Nehisi Coates conversation as well. I think he's moved since then as well, but even then, there's an element there. There's a blind spot there where it's like I grew up with this ideology. I learned about it, and it's impossible for me. Knowing what I know, everything that I've learned, it's impossible for me to see it as anything but. And it's a glaringly obvious moral inconsistency that he actually reveals later when he's talking about. I didn't say blind spot? What did I say? Did I say blind side? Yeah, blind spot. Turkey's pretty broadly recognized an ethno-state by scholars, but you don't see leftists defending Turkey's erasure of ethnic minorities on the regular. Exactly, and I don't do it either, right? The thing about Israel is that it is exceptional. Like, what Israel is doing is exceptional. A lot of people try to say, oh, everyone's done it, without explaining that, yeah, they did it in the 13th century, okay? Or one of the more contemporary, one of the more modern examples of this is, the Holocaust. So these are things that are roundly criticized, like routinely condemned. It's one of the few things that most historians agree, alongside chattel slavery and the Holocaust, that was like unbelievably evil. It's historians rarely look at events that have transpired and then turn around and offer some kind of subjective sentiment to it, or they don't say this is bad, right? Usually, but those are the two things that they openly say are bad. Aaron Regenberg also had a take on Ezra's ethnostates existing, but we'll get to that in a second. Actually, you know what? I'll just read it. Aaron Regenberg also wrote that New Republic piece, which I never would have thought would reach Ezra Klein's eyes. So I am happy that it did, right? Because when I did that, I genuinely thought, like, I like Aaron. I think he's it's very clear that he wants to try to like help. I just thought that it's the New Republic. I know Daniel wrote one in The Nation as well, specifically addressing the smears, the accusations about my anti-Semitism. And both of these guys were like trying to, communicate to a broader audience, but it's The Nation, it's the New Republic. Like, you're preaching to the converted, right? Like, for the most part. So I didn't think that would have the impact. I mean, I'm eternally grateful for him doing so, for saying the truth, right? Because the reality of the matter is, it is objectively a courageous act. It shouldn't be, but it is a courageous act to say the truth sometimes, right? He says, I'm grateful for Ezra Klein's super thoughtful column today, and also appreciate that he referenced a piece I wrote on Hasan, but I need to make one, in my opinion, corrective point. Ezra wrote, what made the Nazis notable wasn't their support for an ethnostate. Ethnostates are common. What made the Nazis notable was their effort to exterminate the Jewish people. I think Ezra would probably agree, if push came to shove, that the Nazis were notable before their launch of the final solution in 1941. It'd be fair to say what made the Nazis most notable, but what made the Nazis notable is just not really defendable as a precise statement of fact. It's true. The mechanized death of all of the victims in the Holocaust, 6 million Jews and millions of others as well, that is what made the Nazis the most notable. But they were certainly notable before that, right? The Nazis were the Nazis in 1933 and 1935 and 1939, etc. They were bad and they were worth opposing before they began their effort to exterminate the Jewish people. And I don't think it makes much sense to say we can only analogize them or learn lessons about them post-1941. And that's kind of an important point, because that's precisely what we are doing, right? That's precisely what we are doing. We're trying to stop fascism from taking root to reach its, worse conclusions. And for Israel, it has already reached that. Israel has already reached the concentration camp, death camp, Holocaust status. And they've done so in broad daylight. Which is also crazy. Ezra Klein's essay on Hasan Piker at least comes out with the correct position, but this idea that we're dealing with a different Israel today ignores the fact that the romanticized Israel older people remember was established with the Nakba. Exactly. That's precisely what it is, right? That is the significant difference in opinion between someone like myself, an anti-Zionist, and someone like Ezra Klein, who at least is like more open-minded to the anti-Zionist perspective than the average liberal Zionist is, because the average liberal Zionist has completely either dropped the whole liberalism element of it and is maybe only coming back to it like J Street is in an effort to just like hold on to whatever allegiance that America could continue having with the nation state of Israel, right? But let's keep going, because this part is just one aspect of it, because he's going to, turn around and I read the whole article, Chad, I know. But to only focus on those comments is to miss much else that Piker has said and believes. He has also said, from pogroms to the Holocaust, Jews have always been singled out by those in power as a scapegoat for the instability and economic volatility that people in power caused. A resilient, nascent anti-Semitism is a constant threat. He has called anti-Semitism gross, immoral, and a hate crime. He has promoted John Ossoff, a Democratic senator from Georgia who is Jewish, as a 2028 presidential possibility. In previous presidential primaries, Piker supported Bernie Sanders, who is also Jewish. It is an unusual form of Jew hatred that calls out anti-Semitism and promotes Jewish Americans for the presidency. I have deep disagreements with Piker, but he isn't a Jew hater. He's an anti-Zionist. And here, I think, the real stakes of this fight come into view. We are living through a rupture in both the meaning and the reality of Israel. A Gallup poll from February found, for the first time, that more Americans sympathize with the Palestinians than with the Israelis. Among Democrats, the gap was overwhelming, with 65% who sympathized more with the Palestinians and 17% with the Israelis. The difference, as I have argued, is largely generational. Older Americans still view the Israelis more sympathetically, but among Americans aged 18 to 34, 53% sided with the Palestinians and 23% with the Israelis. This is new. Before 2023, young people and Democrats were more likely to side with the Israelis. This is not a result of an international psyop or a profusion of memes. The Israel that young people know is not the Israel that older people remember. Now, this gives Ezra Klein's perspective a little bit more clarity, right? Because I've been here for the last decade and a half professionally in my career as an anti-Zionist, as an open, avowed anti-Zionist, right? The old Israel is still the new Israel. The new Israel is just accelerated and is doing this in broad daylight. It's accelerated its mowing of the lawn operations. It's accelerated its domination and complete annexation of the West Bank. But those wounds continued. Those strikes continued in the old Israel. It's just that the media environment and the perception of the Western world of old Israel was the country that dominated all of the Arabs. Okay, all the pesky Arabs that got together and tried to fight the Jewish state over and over again was met with fierce resistance, right? Like that was the attitude. A lot of boomers are still on that mindset. They don't recognize Israel as an apartheid state that is conducting a genocide, that's taking over Lebanon, taking over territory in Syria, that is endlessly expanding and is a danger to all of its neighbors and to all civilians, and even a danger to its own citizens as well, if you care about that sort of thing. So that's always been the case. It's just now virtually impossible to avoid that reality. Okay? For many who did not grow up with the old Israel, the only moral nation in the Middle East, the only democracy in the Middle East mentality, which was a lie, right? For many who only know Israel as the genocidaire state, who only know Israel through the arrogance that its envoys demonstrate, who only know Israel through Israel's domestic interests in the United States of America, constant demands for cancellations, constant demands for doxing people, constant demands for firing people, for turning around and saying something that a lot of people believe, saying something that a lot of people saw with their own two eyes, that Israel is a malignant actor in this region and a malignant force in American politics, right? For simply supporting Palestine, for simply supporting Palestinian sovereignty. It doesn't happen anymore. That was the first experience that many people had, and they will never change their mentality. It is never going back. Right? Ezra Klein changed the Hasan opinion title 9 minutes ago. Guys, please, it doesn't fucking matter, okay? Ezra Klein has no say on the title changes, okay? Title changes are editorial decisions made by the editorial board of the opinion editorial team in the New York Times, and the title changes don't matter. Okay, let's continue. They're A/B testing different titles. We do it as well. Okay, it's normal. It responded to the savagery of October 7 by flattening Gaza in a brutal campaign that killed at least 70,000 Gazans, taking control of more than half the territory, and herding Gazans, more than 2 million people, into the remainder. Life there remains hellish. Israel has made hopes of a two-state solution fanciful by slicing the West Bank up into Israeli settlements and abetting constant settler violence and keeping a boot on the throat of the Palestinian Authority. It has used the Iran war as an opportunity to launch an invasion of Lebanon, displacing more than 1 million people and announcing that as many as 600,000 won't be allowed to return to their homes until Israel decides otherwise. The Knesset just voted to legalize hanging as a punishment for Palestinians who are convicted of killing Israelis in terrorist attacks. This is, on the one hand, like even the language that he uses, this is something that Ta-Nehisi Coates also pointed out. If you remember in that conversation that they had almost 1.5 years ago, where Ta-Nehisi said, you always say the more militant forces on the Palestinian side are savages, but you never use similar language when you're talking about the Israeli side. The Israeli side is still a democracy, right? It still has that consideration of existing as a liberal democracy. So if it's a democratic decision that Likud is abiding by, they are simply operating on the majority's desires. Okay? Yeah, he says right-wing extremists when it comes to Israelis, including the settlers. He says savagery and barbarians when it comes to Hamas, when it comes to the Palestinian resistance, right? People are still people. Those Palestinians still had dreams, they had hopes, right? They had goals, just as the Israelis do. So that's something to consider. That's an implicit bias that comes out in moments like this. I'm obviously not going to lean into it too much because this stuff is far more important to have in the New York Times op-ed piece, right? Part of that racism is part of the state versus non-state dynamic that almost everyone subscribes to, even though you still hear it or don't hear it nearly the same language you hear for Hamas or Hezbollah as you do for Iran. Yes, we have obviously addressed this many times over on this broadcast. Americans have this established attitude about state versus state violence versus as opposed to state versus non-state actors and who gets to do violence and what that violence is perceived as. Israel is a nation state. Israel is a democracy. When they behave in certain ways, no matter how violent it is, no matter how unbelievably violent it is, we think of it as like an expression of democracy, of the democratic process in Israel, right? That's precisely the reason why it's very different. It's a very different calculation when you got a foreign minister who can speak to Americans, an Iranian foreign minister who can go on American television and demonstrate that, you know, he has multiple fucking PhDs. All of a sudden, Americans can hear from him. Very different attitude is developed in that process, right? That's why it's huge that Benjamin Netanyahu is from Philadelphia. Like, this is a very consequential element. I promise you, it plays a major role. That's why he does the Hebrew language proposals, and then he does the English one. And I always tell you, there's key differences in the way that he communicates to the Western world versus the way he communicates to the Israeli population, right? Anyway, third way suggests you can identify Jew haters by their use of loaded words taught in social justice seminars: apartheid, genocide, settler colonialism. If that is the test, then a large number of American Jews now fail it. Israel, as it is behaving today, and as it is constructing itself for tomorrow, is incompatible with any normal understanding of liberal values. That's it. That's the fucking truth nuke. That's also the contradictory statement that he that contradicts with his previous statement of like liberal Zionism is also liberal Nazism, where he goes, ethno-states exist. Chill out. That is correct. That is correct. It's just 100% correct. It is utterly incompatible with modern day liberalism. It's utterly incompatible with modern rules of conduct, modern rules of warfare, rules of engagement. It is siege warfare that most people thought we left behind in like the fucking 15th century. America's bringing it back too. And obviously, a lot of Israel defenders will say, what are you talking about? It's because if there's no Jews, there's no news, right? Like, look at Sudan, look at Sudan. Now, the difference there is twofold, okay? What is happening in Sudan is heinous. It's a genocide. It's backed by the United Arab Emirates and therefore, in some ways, backed by Israel as well and Western forces, or at least Western governments turn a blind eye to these atrocities. But that's not because there's no Jews involved in that situation. That's because the United Arab Emirates doesn't have as pervasive of a fucking lobby in the United States of America that constantly demands you get fired from your job for saying what's going on in Sudan is a genocide. Ironically enough, it is the pro-Israeli groups and institutions that have created this kind of resistance against Israel in the United States of America, right? That's a big part of it because Americans are somewhat selfish people, right? That's it. Because there are atrocities unfolding all around the world. The difference, the other key difference is, and this is precisely the reason why those pro-Israel groups have to exist in the Western world, is because Israel is carrying out these atrocities with our weapons. Israel is carrying out these atrocities with our unlimited funds and our unlimited defense, both political defense at the United Nations General Assembly, but also with direct defense in the form of Tamir interceptors, for example, THAAD missile launchers, anti-air defense systems, sometimes directly putting our soldiers on the line, their lives on the line to defend the nation state of Israel. That's the key difference. That's a huge difference. Okay, this will be clipped out of context and you will see it in the news XD. Wait, what? I don't know what you are even pointing to because nothing I said is wrong. Do you understand? Like, I'm of this mindset that if Belgium was doing what it used to do in the Congo, right? Like right now, and America was like, no, you have to do that. This has to happen. We have to also forcibly put Belgians in there, and establish settlements and stuff like that. Yeah, there would probably be similar anger and resentment. That's how it is. There will be no Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River, Benjamin Netanyahu said. For years, I have prevented the creation of that terror state against tremendous pressure, both domestic and from abroad. We have done this with determination and with astute statesmanship. That exact paragraph in the article is why you can't be a liberal Zionist. There's no such thing. Yeah, I mean, you can be, but it's just like there's varying degrees of fascist sentiment, right? And it exists in America as well. I'm going to always bring it back to America. Like you have Christian nationalists, white supremacists. You have varying degrees of people who demonstrate that kind of like underlying racist sentiment, anti-blackness, anti-immigrant sentiment, things of that nature, right? Not every single person is going to be maxed out on the fucking Nazi spectrum. And it's no different on liberal Zionism versus ultra Zionism as well, right? That's how it is. Some of you know people in your lives who are otherwise very kind people, but have these like massive fucking blind spots when it comes to, the way that they approach black people, for example, right? Like maybe they don't act out on those desires, luckily, but they still have those opinions, right? Like they still carry a little bit of that resentment, a little bit of that fear, the unjustifiable fear. Our goal here is to identify that and tackle it, right? Identify that, combat it, help people come to better conclusions, right? That's how systemic racism exists, all right? And it's not different for Zionism. Like, I deal with fucking people who have, fascist adjacent beliefs on a daily fucking basis. I try to convince them. And it's the same for liberal Zionists as well. So it's very frustrating to me when people make it seem like there is this otherized status when I say, How dare, when I say liberal Zionism is akin to liberal Nazism, people go, how dare you say that? Right? How dare you? Is not that different from, liberals that might have some racialized animus as well, right? There will be no Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River. For years, I've prevented the creation of a terrorist state. We've done this determination with this two-statesmanship. Moreover, we've doubled the Jewish settlement in Judea and Samaria. And we will continue on this path. Anti-Zionism is a rising response to what Israel is doing. Well, it's a response to what Israel was doing and is still doing, right? It will simply not be possible to treat it as a marginal viewpoint that can be shamed or shunned into invisibility. Yes, anti-Semitism often cloaks itself in anti-Zionism, so don't do the anti-Semites work for them. If you keep telling people that this is bars. If you keep telling people that they oppose the Jewish state, then they must hate Jewish people, eventually they will believe you. Felix Biederman, in the last Chapo episode, put this in less kind terms, where he said, if you think Hasan Piker is an anti-Semite and you want to cast him aside, even though he cares about anti-Semitism 8,000 times more than I do, Felix said this as a Jewish man, you're not going to like what comes next. Okay? He's right. It's unbelievable that they're still playing this fucking idiotic game. They're just not even recognizing it. Right? The impulse to cut those off with whom we disagree reaches far beyond Piker or the Israel-Palestinian debate. It sits at the heart of cancellation as a political tactic. It relies on a belief in the power of gatekeepers that might have been true in an earlier age, but no longer reflects as the way attention is earned and held. Tucker Carlson was ejected from Fox News and grew stronger on X and YouTube. Nick Fuentes was banned from major social media platforms and gathers strength in the shadows. Trump went from being banned by every major social media platform to retaking the presidency. But it's not just cancellation. It's not just that cancellation has failed to silence those it targeted. It also weakened those who used it. The Democratic Party and the progressive movement was ill-served by the belief that it could decide the boundaries of acceptable debate. In narrowing who it could talk to, it limited what it could hear and whom it could be heard by. I haven't been on Rogan's show, but I've been on some of the shows in that broader universe, like Andrew Schultz's Flagrant and Lex Friedman's podcast. I was surprised by how frustrated the hosts were about their inability to book Democrats in 2024. They had said things that the broader progressive universe disliked or had conversations with people who were anathema to the left. And so Democrats largely avoided these podcasts, ceding them to the Trump campaign. This was not only bad politics, but also bad Democratic practice. These shows had come from nowhere and had gained millions of loyal listeners. They had earned their viewership by voicing something that made millions of Americans feel seen, heard, or at least interested. In avoiding those places, Democrats avoided contact with the kinds of voters they otherwise claimed to represent. This is the mistake Democrats often make when they talk about what they did wrong in 2024. They realize now that they should try to talk to the people who listen to these shows. They are less likely to realize that they should listen to the people who talk on these shows. They realize now that they should try to talk to the people who listen to these shows. They are less likely to realize that they should listen to the people who talk on these shows. Beneath this is an important principle. Conversation is not a reward to be bestowed on those with whom we agree. It's a necessary habit in democracy. The point is not to find agreement so much as to deepen understanding, theirs and your own. Whether you like everything that someone has said should be severed from the question of whether that person is worth talking to. Okay? We here on the left do this as well, and obviously I don't entertain it. And I think that's a major difference that I have with a lot of other people. And people will constantly look for other reasons as to why I do that, right? Other reasons as to why I do that, where they're like, oh, there's got to be some ulterior motive here. It's because he's hungry for clout or whatever. It's like, no, I will talk to anyone and everyone, no matter where they are. I'm not going to compromise on my values, but I will try to convince not only my interlocutor, but also my interlocutor's audience that might not have actually ever encountered my perspective, and certainly not encountered my perspective without filters. Right? Yes, we're going to talk about Orban in a second. The space for such conversations was once wider. Wait, what did I... The point is not to find agreement as much as to deepen understanding. To talk with others is to believe in the possibility of change, theirs and your own. Whether you like everything that someone has said should be severed from the question of whether that person is worth talking to. The space for such conversations was once wider. In 1968, William F. Buckley Jr., the arch-conservative founder of National Review, hosted Eldridge Cleaver, the Minister of Information for the Black Panthers, on the firing line. Neither man was there to endorse the other's politics. I should like to begin by asking Mr. Cleaver whether he finds it inconsistent with his ideology to encourage the assassination of Mr. Richard Nixon, Buckley said. Cleaver's answer: I would say that if Richard Nixon was assassinated, it would only result in having another pig in line who possibly would need to be assassinated. Bars. Buckley later hosted Cleaver at his home. It was a different time, but it created a lasting artifact. The interview has hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube and remains riveting to watch. Are there people I won't have on my shows or shows I won't go on? Sure. But those judgments, for me, are more about what I think will be productive rather than who I think can be included. Similarly, I wouldn't judge Booker or Gallego or Slotkin for avoiding Piker's show. They're busy people, and it may not be how they want to spend their time. But there's something strange about aspiring to lead the country's left-wing coalition and elevating the avoidance of prominent leftists to a matter of principle. That's all the more true now, as attention isn't bestowed on the chosen few by television networks and newspaper editors. It's won or lost in a ferocious marketplace that rewards outrage and controversy. The winners of the attention wars today are typically people who said some outrageous things in the past or are still saying them in the present. When you're dealing with podcasters or streamers who talk unstructured, unrehearsed for hours each week, if not every day, there's going to be so much said that it's almost inevitable that a dossier of dumb statements can be compiled. To write those people out of acceptable political discourse is to back yourself into a shrinking, sanitized corner of the public sphere. This part is also huge. This part is also fucking huge. Yeah, I know. Peter Magyar won the Hungarian elections. Okay, I'm gonna talk about it. Jesus, Lord mercy, it's so funny that people are so ecstatic. Okay, yes. Viktor Orban is down. Okay, I know. Here, I'll put it in the title too. Orban for prison. Orban for prison 2028. Orban for prison 2026. We'll do a crab dance in a second. Let me just go through this, please. Booker admitted on Pod Save America that when he said he would never go on Piker's show, he had never heard of Piker. His communications director had read him a list of the 4 or 5 worst things Piker has said, and Booker used that as the basis for his response. Booker got piled on for that admission, but I appreciated the honesty. That is, in practice, a version of how many of us make our judgments. Algorithmic media is an engine of motivated decontextualization. We see other people in snippets that serve the agendas of those who cut them. We are fed 30-second clips shorn from multi-hour streams, 2-sentence quotes ripped from long conversations, old comments that obscure subsequent change. We have to be careful about being lulled into believing these shards represent anyone's whole person. We should not be afraid of finding out who those people are, of seeking to change them, or of allowing ourselves to be changed by them. That is fucking bars. It is fundamentally what I believe as well. It is at the heart of my politics. It is one of the things that I constantly say, and I'm glad that a liberal is saying that. Okay? I'm glad that a liberal is saying that at a time when, let's be real, this kind of cynical standpoint epistemology and identity politics and cancellation attempts are the tool of the right. Okay? The right will always use that to their left flank. The right will cynically apply this to the likes of Gavin Newsom, as we saw, right? But then the center right of the Democratic Party has consistently used this as a tool, as a weapon to destroy their left flank as well. Bernie Sanders was victim to this, right? A guy who has been on the right side of history for most of his life, if not his entire life, that spans across multiple centuries at this point. He's 800 years old, okay? And liberals cynically presented him, painted him as this monstrous person, this like this figure of reactionary sentiment, this anti-black, anti-woman, misogynist, all this stuff. Ridiculous. Rotimi Adeoye says, honestly, everyone keeps talking about this woke 2.0 thing, but the Hasan Piker discourse has convinced me that the second iteration of this in 2028 will be far more nasty than the 2020 campaign because of the idea policing and PC-sensitive crowd will be more aggressive. Like the screen grab is going to look like light work when 2028 happens. I don't think so. And a candidate is apologizing for an influencer that worked years ago who said one off-color thing, and people are trying to burn this candidate forever about it. Will be interesting. I don't think so. I think if our forces win, then I don't believe that this will happen, and I hope that they will, right? Because it's objectively silly. It's self-defeating. It doesn't, it betrays how normal people think and how normal people operate. It doesn't make any sense to behave like that, right? Democrats do need to open up and improve and open up conversation. But in the example follow that Mr. Klein gives, there's an enormous difference between William F. Buckley's time and ours. Eldridge Cleaver would almost be certainly arrested and imprisoned under our current regime. I mean, I think, as a Black Panther back then, he was also under significant threat. The American government was assassinating its leadership. So Democrats do not need a liberal Joe Rogan. They need a Franklin Delano Roosevelt banger. Last night, a Jew, and a Jewish friend, both Gen Xers, were bemoaning the state of Middle Eastern politics. We grew up planting trees in Israel, and like many of our generation, have steadfastly defended that country against its detractors, even when the detractors were right. Now we both feel that Israel, like Donald Trump's America, isn't defensible. We can't just twist ourselves into the necessary pretzels for such an exercise. We're not happy about that. We don't feel somehow liberated. It's incredibly sad. But there are some things we simply can't buy, and Israel is now one of those things. Like it or not, the Jewish diaspora in Israel are tied at the hip. We're expected to support Israel financially, militarily, spiritually, no matter what. Indeed, we are shunned by our community if we don't. The government of Israel also demands this blind allegiance, and yet, where is my vote? Do I get a say in whether Ben-Gvir or Smotrich sits in the Knesset or on the cabinet? Israel wants my money and my fealty, but not my opinion. Well, I have news for my Israeli brothers and sisters. I have an opinion, and it isn't a good one. Ooh, that's a Gen Xer. Remember, that's like outside of the younger demos, right? Because you all in here, the Jewish anti-Zionists in this community obviously have encountered a Gen Xer in your lives that definitely is not that open-minded, right? So that's huge. Larry, but we don't send $4.8 billion, provide diplomatic cover, and veto legitimate UN sanctions for other countries. Great column. I'm frustrated by Democrats who refuse to campaign everywhere and who can't see the enormous opportunity of reaching voters listening to the hosts whom they disagree. It's quite simple to understand that people understand when they are being condescended to. Tim Walz, former football coach, not going on the Joe Rogan to yap it out for Kamala in 2024 will always bewilder me. He would have been a perfect Democrat for Rogan's audience to hear from. I agree with that as well. At Larry, for my entire 70-year life, this is like a reply to Larry, I guess, who like maybe, he deleted it in shame. Okay. A lot of people are just like dunking on Larry. For my entire 70-year life, the U.S. has had a unique and close connection with Israel that I once felt good about. Israel meant just for deeply persistent wrong people, the settler movement, the extreme right wing, and finally Netanyahu and the end of hopes for a two-state solution or just for Palestinians, and then killing 72,000 Palestinian civilians corroded and then severed that connection. Now I cannot support U.S. aid for Israel, and I feel deeply disappointed, hence the unique focus and degree of criticism. The 30-second clips Hasan is talking about are a huge part of the problem. This media fragmentation disproportionately targets women in politics where their tone or character is scrutinized and taken out of context far more than their actual policy platforms. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's one that certainly favors, because in 30 seconds, you can't understand everything that a person is about, right? You can't understand their full scope, who they are as a person, right? That format actually favors white dudes in many respects for that reason, because what can you pick up about a person? How can you make up your mind about a person? By looking at who they are, right? They hear my name is Hasan, I'm Muslim, and I represent this worldview, they immediately lean to certain biases. They make up their minds about my perspective for that reason. It's the same when they see a woman, right? A black woman especially. It's the same when they see a black man. When you get, what is this? You're getting subtweeted by ContraPoints? What? Why? Oh my God. You knew this would happen, didn't you? That's why the HDS shitstorm didn't faze you. No, because the Hasanabi derangement syndrome that I have withstood and have experienced for the last almost decade at this point has prepared me for this moment. That's what it is. And it's prepared you for this moment as well. Because all the stuff that people are bringing up, you've heard a million times over. You've heard people bring it up as though it's like a new thing, right? Oh, I just found this video. What the fuck is this? It's like I've explained it away 1,000 times over, right? And it didn't work. And it especially doesn't work now because we're in a very different media environment. And it especially doesn't work now because we live in a very different environment, like an ideological environment where people are demanding more. People don't have the same implicit biases that favor the development and the protection of the nation state of Israel, right? So that's what it is. Yeah, most people are defending this. I bet most Democrats who object to Piker have never listened to his show. Instead, they've been presented with a few clips of the most outrageous things he has said and told themselves they want nothing to do with him. I saw this in real time on an episode of The Bulwark with Sarah Longwell and Tim Miller, hardly a left-wing show. She read out a series of Piker's quotes and argued why she wanted nothing to do with him. He was an irredeemable anti-Semite. There was nothing more to discuss. The whole conversation was a knee-jerk reaction to anything that smacked of criticizing Israel. It's horrific treatment of Palestinians before and October 7th. Dude, this is exactly what I was saying. You see? Ellen from Philadelphia, who is a Bulwark fan, saw what Sarah Longwell was saying about me, calling me an heinous anti-Semite, okay? And immediately went, I have heard this before. Do you understand? Do you understand why I kept saying over and over again, we're in a very different environment? We're very different media environment. People can actually see the full context now. They can come to me. But also very different ideological environment as well. Very different environment that hears outspoken critics of Israel and sees outspoken defenders of Israel call them anti-Semites for years and years and years. And they go, I've heard this before, right? This is precisely what I was talking about. It's part of the reason why I was like, I'm not worried about this shit, you know? And it's outside influence in American politics. In some circles, you're just not allowed to point out what Israel is doing, while the rest of us stand here horrified yet afraid to say too much, lest we be accused of being anti-Semitic. A brief reading of the comments of that video showed just how far apart Sarah was from her viewers. Unfortunately, Democrats are so afraid of offending the easily offended in the party that they don't know how to have honest conversations with people with whom they might have some disagreement, especially when it comes to Israel. It's really quite discouraging and not likely to build a larger coalition of the very people Democrats say they want and need to attract. There seems to be more policing on that issue than there is on anything else in the political discourse right now. It is not helpful. In this column is the answer to why progressives, of which I one, have lost so many voters and the solution to getting them back. But to accept this truth and start winning elections will require the very few human beings, the things very few human beings can do. Let go of the sense of superiority. It gives you a sense of self-esteem. Be genuinely open to dialogue with those you disagree with. Actually talk with them. And the hardest of all, be open to changing your mind. The path to power lies before you. So yeah, I think everyone's dunking on Larry. I suspect, judging by what people have said, judging how people have responded to Larry, I assume he was like, why does everybody care about Israel so much? You know, because everyone is like, yeah, you know, it's giving Jew hatred a little bit, sweetie. remember, this is the New York Times subscription base, right? This is the New York Times editorial page. These are the people who wrote 524 comments so far on this article that just came out a couple hours ago. Okay? So just understand that this is not, the Hasanabi head constituency. Okay? These are the Barbaras and the Debras. These are the highly educated, urban, and even sometimes suburban white liberals with a higher degree of educational attainment, and also ones that are financially better off. Okay, we're talking about the coastal elites that play a major role in the base of support for the Democratic Party, at the heart of the Democratic Party, the ones that go out and vote in the primaries, the ones that go out and vote in special elections. This is who is ride or die for the Dems. So for them to come out and lean into what Ezra is saying is huge. Something has changed. This is what I've been repeatedly explaining to you over and over again, and I've seen it with my own two eyes, right? The New York Times closed the comment section. They have almost 600 comments, so they turned it off. I was going to comment, but it shut down. Too many people supporting you. That drives the editors. No, they like the comments. I'm subscribing. They shut down the comments because it was too much. It backfired. I'm just a regular guy that wants to understand what the elites think. No. I think they do that normally. That's fine. In a couple hours once it comes out. I don't think that the editors hate clicks and conversation that takes place under their profiles, under their editorial pieces. Anyway. I must admit, I was lost reading most of this article as if I was continually caught in an ideological maze that I could not exit. The habits or mindsets I developed over the years of running a small organization were dismissive of abstract theoretical discussions, always focused on how to make the systems and personnel work better. Really, what the American voter is yearning for is a government that works, that repairs roads, provides decent health care, that keeps schools safe, that provides affordable childcare, housing, transportation. I could go on. But attending to the details and processes of a well-run organization leaves little time to debate or discuss the meaning and implications of the cultural vocabularies now circulating in the podcast circuit. If I have to choose between someone who, whatever their flaws, stands firmly against ethnic cleansing and genocide, and someone who, whatever their virtues, won't be unambiguously against these crimes and their perpetrator, my conscience requires me to side with Mr. Piker. That's the argument. That is the reason why when people were like, oh, Hasan, how do you feel in this moment? You're getting inundated with like smears and shit like that, right? I said, I don't feel lonely at this point. It doesn't matter, because the people who are choosing to present themselves as enemies of myself and this community are choosing to present themselves as enemies to the overwhelming majority of the population that has seen heinous acts of violence perpetrated with our tax dollars and demands change. It's a 90-10 issue, right? It's a fucking 90-10 issue. The moderates in the Democratic Party constantly complain we need to reach out to other voters and stop canceling each other, that the extremists in the party keep forcing them into unpopular positions. Then they run into a genuinely popular voice like Hasan Piker, and because he insults Israel and pushes Medicare for all, he needs to be canceled and ostracized. Even those ideas are much more popular than moderate positions like unlimited aid to Israel and no limits on drug prices. Who really are the extremists? This is also another attitude shift that is brewing. Okay? This is also important to understand. I believe it was Morris Katz who did the ad campaign for Zohran Mamdani and Fight Agency that had a really interesting podcast. Had a really interesting conversation on, I think it was the Nation's podcast, Fighting Fascism podcast, where he basically said, Americans think Trump is a moderate. It's true. They do. Americans think Zohran Mamdani is a moderate. Americans think Bernie Sanders is a moderate. Americans think Kamala Harris is a radical. Why? Now, of course, demographics play a role in this, but Zohran Mamdani is a brown guy, right? He's brown. He's Muslim. He's a socialist, and he's an anti-Zionist, right? So Kamala Harris is partially seen as a radical because she's a black woman from California, certainly plays a major role in that dynamic, as opposed to Donald Trump, who is an insane person and yet seen as a moderate from their own, from, the perspective of the base on his side. Now, why is that the case? Because Trump is a populist. He is a right-wing sloppulist that has been, especially in the first 2016 election, a heterodox Republican, right? He had a lot of positions that he advanced, like not touching Medicare, not touching Social Security, things like that, that were truly unique to the Republican position. Never been heard of before from any Republican, right? While simultaneously leaning heavily into, anti-immigrant sentiment and racism and things of that nature. So this is it. Yep. This is like, it's a meme, but it's kind of how it works. Okay. The aristocrat political pundit class completely oblivious to how the median voter thinks. They're how you get situations like Kamala campaigning with Liz Cheney. Yeah. The average American thinks Kamala Harris is a radical because the only things that they've heard from Kamala Harris are choice quotes that the opposition has defined her as someone who is only invested in giving bottom surgeries, the Guatemalan undocumented migrants. Why does the median voter, why do the Mainers not see Graham Plattner as a radical, whereas the entire commentariat sees Graham Plattner's worldview as far too radical for the moderate to vote for? Why is that the case? Why is that the case? Why is there such a major disconnect with the way that the average voters perceive Graham Plattner versus the blue sky liberals and the commentariat and the way they see Graham Plattner? Because Graham Plattner is uncompromising in his advocacy for trans people, but Graham Plattner is offering every voter something that they can understand, that they can associate with. Graham Plattner is talking about affordability. Graham Plattner is talking about Medicare for all. Graham Plattner is talking about cutting ties with Israel. Okay? And he's not doing the political language around it either. He's not approaching the subject matter with the careful way that you normally hear from experienced politicians, right? That's it. That is the reason. What mainstream media has presented as radical propositions is a lie. Especially when you look at how the median voter approaches that stuff. Mainstream media and the analysts and the people who are backed by corporate entities and corporate interests will tell you Medicare for all is a radical proposition. People don't want that. People are terrified of that. Okay? People are fucking terrified of that. They don't want it at all. Please don't advocate for that. And the politicians hear that and they go, yeah, that must be true. And a lot of liberals hear that and go, I'm internalizing that message. I agree with it as well. I'm a real Deborah, as you say. I'm 62 years old, college educated, New York Times, Hasanabi head, even a wine drinker. You've pegged me 100%. Exactly. Also, Debbie, you shouldn't say you've pegged me. That's, oh no. Hey, yo. That means something different around these parts. Okay. Yeah, near a tangent also had a tangent, near a tangent more like, right? And this was off of one of my choice quotes on the Podjams where I said, I want the Democratic Party to treat me like a never Trumper, right?
you said you wouldn't vote for Gavin Newsom against J.D. Vance in 2028.
Yeah,
and you vote third party.
I mean, I don't even think that's going to be a problem.
Well, but like a lot of people, including people who share a lot of your critiques of the Democratic Party, hear that and think like this is the problem. You know, when the stakes are concrete, like a Vance presidency, another 4 years of what we're living through, you know, the people who say they're building a movement would, you know, like rather preserve their own power than, you know, do what winning requires and, you know, hold your nose and vote for what you believe would be the lesser of two evils. Like, how do you respond to that?
I want the Democratic Party to treat me like a never Trumper. I want the Democratic Party to treat me like a triple Trump voter, okay? Because it turns out that's all they're tuned into. So if what it takes for the Democrats to turn around and be like, wait a minute, we're losing this guy, we have to win him over again or whatever, instead of just like taking my vote for granted as they've done so over and over again for the left flank, then, you know, I'm going to say things that may or may not end up being true, but it doesn't matter. We're so far out from the election anyway that it's like I'm just saying, look, now is your opportunity to find a good candidate instead. Because,
but you see, as we head into these, that like after what we've lived through these last years, the stakes and the stark difference between even a Democrat who you and I might find not up to par, to say the least, versus Vance or whoever the fuck they put up.
Of course. I mean, I hate Republicans. I oppose them. I say that all the time. I think that the Republicans are far more damaging. The biggest terrorists, the biggest domestic terrorists in this country, the biggest terrorists internationally is the Republican Party. And not only that, but it's just like I want to fight against the growing fascist movement in this country. My frustration with the Democrats is their conciliatory attitude towards that and their lack of investment in this struggle. This idea that, you know, on the one hand, you say Donald Trump's a dangerous force. I see that. I recognize that. But then you turn around and you take on his anti-immigrant narratives and anti-immigrant messaging from the 2020 election that you won and decide you're going to be the sincere candidate that ends up, dealing with the growth of migration in this country. It's a failure. If you were serious about being an anti-fascist, if you were serious about combating these forces, you would take it more seriously. Near Tana said the Never Trumpers treat the Democratic Party a lot better than Piker does. I said I voted actively door knock for, fundraised, platform Dems, and progressive cause for the last decade and a half while they were working to oppose your agenda. The issue is you have more in common with them than you do with me, and that's the problem you're facing right now. To which he responded with, perhaps there's a semantic difference here. Never Trumpers champion Kamala, even though they disagree with her on a lot of policies. They did so because they saw the stakes of the election and how things like this utter disaster of the last year could happen. They also championed Biden and Hillary for the same reason. I'm glad you work for so many progressive causes, but saying you see no difference in Kamala and Trump and blasting that out to millions helped Trump. And 2024 was an existential election. Now, maybe those statements were taken out of context. Happy to engage in conversation anytime. Okay? Here's the thing. The Never Trumpers didn't have to get concessions because they got those concessions ahead of time with the way that Kamala Harris presented herself. This is the problem. And these people don't want to understand that. It's not just parading around with Liz Cheney. It's also saying things like, I'm gonna command the most lethal military at the DNC, refusing to have a Palestinian speaker at the DNC, refusing to have a trans speaker at the DNC. What you communicate in the finite amount of time that you have, 107 days, to win an election with your campaign is important. It's consequential. And the Democrats actively communicated to the Never Trump agenda. They actively communicated to try to win over the suburbanites, the white, relatively well-off suburban voters. Okay? That's it. That's it. Yeah, you literally have 25,000 hours of anti-Republican commentary. You shouldn't really have to door knock. Yeah, I mean, look, it's also silly to say like, oh, you just only say that Trump and Kamala Harris are the same over and over again. It's a blanket statement that you're applying that absolutely betrays the nuance of my analysis, my commentary. It's a totally ridiculous thing to keep slapping on over and over again. My anger and resentment was Kamala Harris's methods of communication where she was trying to present herself as somewhat Trumpian on a lot of the issues that matter. That's the problem. That's the problem. Anyway. Yeah, we're building the wall after 8 years of saying, you know, the wall is a racist and unnecessary expenditure. Turning around and being like, we're going to be the build the wall party now. Trump is not sincere about building the wall. It's fucking ridiculous. Right? It's totally ridiculous. You do that, people are going to look at you and go, you're inconsistent, you're a failure, you're weak. And now I believe what you're telling me, right? Maybe we do need to build a wall. Maybe immigrants are a national security threat. Maybe Trump is right. I'm going to vote for the guy who's been right all along then. I'm not going to vote for you. I'm going to vote for the other guy. That is the calculation. You're pushing people to vote for your opposition when you concede on the hysteria that they've concocted. Yeah, I think back to that 60 Minutes interview where Harris said Iran was the biggest threat to America, and I cringe. Exactly. You can't get away with like saying shit like that over and over again, presenting yourself as like a war hawk, and then get mad when Trump took advantage of that to turn around and say, oh, see, I'm actually the peace candidate. I'm a peaceful dove. Look, they're running around with Liz Cheney. They're saying they're accepting the endorsement of Dick Cheney, right? It's fucking ridiculous. Don't try to rewrite the history, okay? I totally agree with this, but I wish more of this big tent energy was directed at people who drove Jared Golden and Joe Manchin out of Congress rather than the meta discourse about podcasts. Oh my God, Matt Iglesias. Yeah, no, the Democrats are not conciliatory enough to the right-wing forces within the party. The Klein essay on Piker is good because it might be the first time someone with a large platform says this. We don't talk to people we disagree with. Mindset is new. It took off post-2016 with the rise of political correctness. The activists of the past did not act like this. And it's ironic because when American politics was more openly racist, sexist, people were actually arguing more. That open conflict is part of how things changed and improved over time. People saw the disagreement and allowed them to decide their beliefs, which helped the left. I don't understand how people who want society to improve expect to get there by refusing to engage with opposing views. You can't change minds if you won't talk to them. Enjoy the echo chamber, but it's just not going to change your community or the world. And just dismissing people as white men podcasters that engaging their arguments is not serious. If you're putting ideas into public discourse, you should be willing to defend them. Falling back on identity politics just shows you're lazy. Yeah, Tim Walz also said he would do a nuclear first strike on Iran. Like, what are we talking about? The forever wrong Matt Iglesias. At least he isn't that creature, Michael Treacer, Richard Hanania, who loves sex crimes. Oh my God, Richard Hanania. Oh, brother. Oh, brother. Matt Iglesias makes Nick Shirley look like Noam Chomsky. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So, I think this is a big deal because a lot of people will read this, a lot of people will see this, and they will retreat, as Trey Easton has as well. Look, I don't think Hasan Piker is the enemy. I just wish that he and his followers didn't treat the Democratic Party like it's their enemy, right? And then he retreats back into never Trumpers don't make concessions. Yeah, they don't have to. They're doing it right now, though, right? The Democratic Party, by force, it has to reckon with its left flank, okay? And once that happened, you and all the others who represent the interests of never Trumpers decided you had an issue with that. You didn't want to expand the tent to the fucking left. You wanted to expand the tent to the fucking right. That's why this conversation is taking place, but I'm glad that he's at least smart enough to retreat from the conversation after spending weeks and weeks talking about this shit. They tried to avoid talking about you because they know their perspectives are milquetoast bullshit and they know the risk losing their liberal audience to rising class consciousness of building a true movement. Yes. Anyway, we have some fantastic news. Ynet Global. If Orban falls, Israel could lose its EU firewall. Hungary has repeatedly used its EU